what is Adam's impression of the mid-con before all this stuff went down?
I forgot I created that word. I was like, there was a convention that I went to? No. I mean, again, it comes to the idea with a lot of midwives, especially like the one we had, it's the idea of they will be your best friend. And the thing about if I had to give one nice note about the midwife that Danielle had, was she was very believable. It's a thing that it's incredible to think back at and be like, okay, that probably wasn't the greatest. And she was very convincible at her job. She was very convincible at what she was trying to achieve. And a lot of them try to. And I get a lot of women want to, or a lot of people in general want to help in the world. But there are many doctors that want to help, and they went through the time and the energy and the practice to get there. Nurses, same thing. But there's a lot of people that just want the easy way of just being there. And just like for the advice of not everything's going to be the same, it goes the same way with midwives. Is the advice I can give to any midwife is, and not all births are going to be the same. You may have an easy birth with one woman, but you're going to have complications like with Danielle or with any woman, and you got to know how to handle it. But even then, she was even convincing when the things went down in the hospital. She was very convincing, and so it was it's troubling to think about. Like, I mean, going through it, like when we were going through it, my experience of it, she was very convincing. The only thing I didn't like was the classes, and I think I even told her I didn't like the meditation. I had a problem with the meditation, and I had a problem with the class because you weren't learning anything. There was nothing to be learned. Again, you might as well waste your money on, if you're going to spend $200, I think you can spend $200 on an annual yoga class, yoga studio or a meditation studio, and have that for the year and just go as many times as you want for that much. But like the money, the time, there was not much to think during that time, mainly because it was a very good illusion that was presented to us. And even though the class wasn't great, we still had believed the mid-con and her ways, because she convinced us we were best friends. And so it's a live and learn situation. And so once you think back at it, if I think back at it now, I feel like I was an idiot and I feel silly believing in it. But
would you recognize that type of person if you met them again for any length of time?
Now I've gotten to a point, even job interviews, anything like that, I get to a point where I'm like, it's too good. I'll wait until this is actually, I've gotten to a point where I'll believe it when I see it. And so like friends that are like con artists and everything, that tell me about amazing job opportunities, or they're like their best friend, I'll believe it when I see it. There is not, I don't like, I could be friendly very easily. I'm very friendly with anybody, but
and just to say, what happened was we went through hypnobirthing because the midwife told us to go do it. She said, you should go take some birthing classes. And she recommended, and she gave us like a couple birthing classes. And I don't remember the other ones that she even suggested, but I remember hypnobirthing was one where she was like, I love hypnobirthing and it's just so great. And it's so awesome, especially for home birthers and, whatever. And so that's why, and she gave us the information to reach out and find out when they were doing classes, because you have to get in. It's like, you do it for the month or whatever, because I think it's like every week you go to a class or something for 5 weeks or whatever amount of weeks it is. And so you have to like schedule in and fit into whatever they're doing. So she gave us the information. So we went to the class from her. where she was just like, it's so great and they're so great and whatever. And I mean, I even remember one of the big things is half the room there was they were having hospital births and half of us were having home births. Because I mean, we are at a birth center or whatever you want to call it. And so we were all asking each other, who's your midwife? And, you know, whatever. And so the people that were doing the classes and, you know, and the place that we were at were like, I love your midwife. She's so great. And like all this stuff, because that's how they are in their community where they all love each other and they're just so great and they're just so knowledgeable and, you know, all this stuff. So it just feeds in the illusion. I want to add
to that though. It's like, I would like to say that with midwives everywhere, like I'm sure there are some ones that mean good, but as you see in like shows and as in reality, when a traumatic event happens, how will you react? Because what you're told as a midwife, and our midwife, the midwife that we had, even convinced me that I should become a midwife. That's how convincing it was that she thought I could. She wanted me to be there for her birth at home and do all of that and be in training and everything like that. It was so convincing. But like, even if I were to become a midwife, my intentions are good of being like, oh, I could go and do home births and everything. But when the actual event happens and the baby dies or the mother dies, unfortunately, you learn quickly in a traumatic event what kind of a person you are. And there are people that will leave the scene. There are people that will hush it up. You don't know a person until the actual event is in your hands. And until then, like, I'm sure a lot of people mean well, and I'm sure that they're amazing at convincing you that it's a nice, normal thing. But I believe more in being honest, and until I meet a person that can actually tell me straight up, look, you have a chance of dying. You know, like, but there's no midwife that's going to say that because that's bad for business. And again, it just comes down to the illusion that you're falling for a euphoria that doesn't exist.
I was going to say she probably wanted you there as an assistant to the birth, so she wouldn't have to pay a birth assistant. You could be her student.
And I mean, and then it could be she could have also had it be a liability thing. Something happened to Danielle, she could just be like, well, your assistant, you know, he was a little, I mean, it's funny to think about now, but like, it could be a thing. It's a thing that a lot of people do. They throw people under the bus. And that's another thing. Good people, you don't know how someone really is until shit hits the fan. Well, and then you realize who they are.
But see, the thing is, she'd already groomed you.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So she's like, you're in my corner. I want you there with us. It would have been wonderful if, you know, she had thought this is the greatest person to support the birthing person, but I think more it was like, oh, I got this person in my pocket already. Let's keep him. Make sure nobody else shows up.
And Adam was not interested, by the way. He did. He said repeatedly at many appointments, he was like, I don't want to be there for that. Like, no, you call me when the baby's born. I don't want to be there for that. Like,
yeah, I told her, I think it. I thought the idea of becoming a person to help people would be a great idea. But I even told Danielle, your birthing experience should be your own, and it shouldn't be, hi, I'm here too. It's my birthing experience as well. No, it should be your first, and this should be an experience you will be like, I got this, instead of, oh, okay, there's my sibling, there's my mother, there's my father, there's a whole, it's not a moment for you to have with your husband. It's a moment of family reunion, and we have many of those. So I'd rather give that to her.
Before all of this, were you ever interested in birth? Or, I mean, I don't know, were you interested in those kinds of things, or was it just because this was your sister?
I was interested I'm interested in psychology a lot. I do like talking to people. I do like, even though I talk a lot more than them, I do like talking to people and hearing their stories and talking through a lot of things with them. And again, like it wasn't going to a medical office and going to a medical building and seeing all of this. I was going to a house. I was going to our midwife's house and being talked to like we're girlfriends. And I was like, and nobody, everyone wants that job. Everyone wants a job where someone can come to your house, you can tell them a bunch of things, and then they pay you hundreds of dollars, and then they leave, and you're like, I feel good. Like everyone wants to have that that moment of like, my buddy is coming over, and I'm getting paid for this. So I mean, yeah, it was very interesting to have that. And so when being talked to and told, because again, I was into psychology and stuff like that, and these therapy, and I believe in all of that. And to be told, yeah, you could do this too. I'm like, yeah, who doesn't want an easy job? That the easy, it's not easy being a professional, like a doctor or a therapist and everything. I'm not talking about that. The easy job of being a midcon, of just sitting there and just taking people's money just to tell them the BS that you could probably learn on YouTube, where people say like, you can do it. And you're like, yes, I can do it. And so to be told that every day, like every problem that Danielle has, I can't tell you if the midwife actually gave us a medical thing. She just said the same thing, every problem, no matter what problem it was. It could be, I've fallen out of bed. She could go, it's your first baby. It's okay. You'll get through it. I'm bleeding. It's your first baby. It's okay. You'll get through it. It's just, there was no medical advice going on. And to hear it from a woman that's going to give birth for you, that should have been a sign. Is that they can't give you a, you know, your body is going through this, and this is happening with the placenta, and the baby is going like this. And no, the most medical advice that she could give us was, your baby is a grapefruit. And, you know, and the thing about midwives that I find very funny that they bring up every time in an argument about if a midwife is worth it, and if a midwife is safe and everything, they always bring up technology, and they always bring up hospitals and how technology has ruined the birthing experience. Okay, let's get real. Every midwife, especially the one we had and everything, they talk about all this stuff, but guess what they use? They use the little heart monitor. That's technology. Okay, if you want to talk about technology, do what the midwife did in the 1600s, where they felt your pulse, and they felt the belly and everything like that, and they made sure they looked at the belly a lot and everything like that. They didn't have that. They didn't have okay, well, the heart monitor is telling me this is what's happening with. So if you want to talk about technology, you need to go back to the 1600s then, and not use technology. There was too many technology in the room, which that should have been a sign. So there's just too many things that if you're going to bring up one thing, you got to do it yourself. And the midwife had those. So
well, she had her magic midwife knowledge, because the possibly the most chilling thing I ever saw in that social media exchange was, my hands feel nothing but baby, when she was talking about the low fluid. And I'm like, that's a bad sign. This person should be in the hospital right now. And she's like, she's asking midwives on the internet, is there something else I should do? It's like, and a lot of them said, oh, here, have some useless shit. And it was like, you got a brain that's telling you something, you got your experience that's telling you something, and you're not listening to it. I was just terrible. And basically that's a midwife in a nutshell.
It goes into, you don't want to admit that you're wrong. And that her record shattered once that happens. It's you have the option of just coming clean and being like, look, maybe there is a problem. I'm sorry. Like it should have been an easy birth, and I thought it was going to be, but we should go check it out. Instead, all you're doing is being like, my record's on the line. What do I do? Let's go to everybody else. So then that way I could go to them. And instead of being like, take charge, it again goes down to, you don't know how you're going to react until the thing is going on. And everyone wants to say that they help people, but they only think about themselves. Everybody thinks about themselves. and what's going to benefit themselves. And unfortunately for her, that's what she did. And it's and most people don't think about anything else.
And like you said, she was so convincing. That was her one superpower, the ability to look you in the face and tell you what she wanted you to hear and get you to believe it. And I mean, one of the things that frustrates people to no end is they're like, I went and I talked to my midwife, or I went and I talked to my OB, and they're saying, this possibility might happen. We're not sure. We're going to have to check things out. We'll know more later. And they're just like, I just want a straight answer. And it's like, well, sometimes the evidence doesn't give you a straight answer. Sometimes it's a bit fuzzy, and and especially people who are naturally prone to anxiety, I mean, that just triggers their anxiety, and they just want someone to hold their hand and tell them everything's going to be okay. And by golly, midwives have got down pat.
And you're right about that, because that's the big thing that they use, is the fear tactics of that, of like how a hospital, a doctor, like they're your friend when you're with the midwives. It's a friend. So through everything that you go through, they're going to hold your hand and they're going to be right there for you. But the doctor's not, because you go to a doctor's appointment, you see them for a few minutes, and then they rush out of the room, and then a nurse might go over, here's your prescription, or here's where you got to go for this, or here's whatever. But they come in really fast. And so that was another big thing that's very appealing and it's such a big thing. And this is what I know from everybody that's had home births that I know. They all chose it because of that. They get that quality individual time with that midwife, where it's like that friend, but you think they have the care. So they present themselves like they somehow have this magical knowledge that when something's going to go wrong, they're going to get you that care that you're going to need. But by the way, that's never going to happen. It doesn't happen. We just don't deal with that, because your body knows what it's doing. Your baby knows what it's doing. Everything just flows right along. But if you go to the hospital, though, you're going to get interventions, and then you're going to get a C-section, and then you're going to have all these other issues. So it's such a buildup that they plant that seed, and it just keeps growing. They just keep making sure they're watering that seed over and over and over, especially and you're so confused when you're pregnant too. You can't hardly think of it. I remember she would ask stuff like, what did you eat today? And I'm like, what did I eat today? You're just so out of it. You are in another world of that. It's really even hard to explain. So it's so easy for someone to convince you to go off the trail of somewhere else and get lost in the woods. Literally, that's what happened. We went and we got my whole family, all of us got lost in the woods. And it was one of those where, unfortunately, we seen it. Adam was there the whole time. Adam went to pretty much almost every appointment. I'm pretty sure you went to almost every single appointment, except for
the midwife,
except for right at the end.
Yeah,
except for right at the end. Yeah, because right at the end, remember, you were working, and so mom took me to the appointment. So right at the end, those last couple week appointments when I was 40 weeks and 41 weeks and all that stuff, all those last things, you weren't there right at the end. But then my mom was questioning it, and then that's where things started getting a little bit crazy, where another side of her really started to show, where she did not like that my mom was she's now overdue. What are we going to do about it? What's the plan here? Are you going to have her go in to get induced? My mom started asking her questions, and she did not like being questioned, because they feed off from us being very naive. They feed off from us not having the information. Unfortunately, that's what it is. You're a new parent. You don't know any better. So of course you're going to believe anything that they tell you. And I mean, even when you go to the doctor, sometimes they'll tell you something and you might not question it. Most people don't question what their doctor says. It's very rare. You have to have a bad experience to be I want a second opinion, and it's kind of one of those. So, I mean, it's a very, very believable con. Holy moly, is it believable of the people? And they infect just like that. It's we were questioning if we were going to be birth workers afterwards, if we were going to be part of births and stuff like that. And like, I totally forgot about that, Adam. I forgot that she was like, you can be a midwife too. You know, there's guy midwives. And she made like a big deal about guys being midwives and not only women are midwives. And she made a big, big deal and was trying to like spout that you should be a midwife and all the stuff, which is like, they feed off other stuff to try to be like, come on, get in here. So it's like, if they have a guy midwife, that's exciting. A guy midwife.
Yeah,
like, we don't hear about them very often.
There's
Yeah.
one in my state, and you know what he specializes in? Clipping tongue ties. He
What?
does, yeah, he does like the is it the frenectomies? That's
Yeah.
what he does. That's what he specializes in. And the other thing that he does is he spends all his time trying to get better, not optics, but to make home birth more visible and to
Marketing.
yeah, he's a marketing guru. So I mean, that's the one male midwife I do know. Maybe Britain, I do know there's a lot, in Australia, a lot of male midwives, and it's a different system. But I don't know a lot of American midwives that do home births that are male. So I know one, but because he's out there, like if it was just a thing, like it used to be a thing, oh, you know, being a nurse is dominated by a certain whatever, and then now that's not true. And you know, it's just one of those things where you shouldn't have to say, but I know of a lot of, because if you do know a lot of, there's probably not that many. And you're just saying it to make a point.
Well, you were talking about midwives and, you know, how you put your trust in them and stuff. And it's like, on my second pregnancy, I had like sudden polyhydramnios. Fluid went up rather remarkably. I think it was second or third trimester, can't remember. But anyhow, and so they're like, whoa, what's going on here? And I think we did a quick ultrasound at the visit. And then they're like, okay, we're going to get you scheduled over at this ultrasound clinic for a full workup. And can you do it this afternoon? We've got a spot open. And I was like, yeah, I think so. So it was like, call my husband and say, I need you to, you know, I need you to stay home from work for the rest of the day so I can do this appointment. And so I'm like, walk in, and I'm like, oh no, what's going on? So they did the whole thing. They showed me everything on the scan. You know, they showed me the screen while they were doing it. And at the beginning, I was so nervous. I was starting to cry. They just handed me a tissue. I apologized for crying because I'm a woman, aren't I? And they're like, it's okay. And they just had a good old time sitting there showing me, you know, all 5 fingers, all 5 toes, every little bit of everything. And it's like, yeah, this is technology done right. This is care done right. This is not saying, oh, we don't know what's happening and we're just going to, you know, we're just going to wait another month and see if any change happens. Now, they were like, let's get you in. Boom. And it was done. And it was just kind of surreal. It sometimes happens with hospital care because they have the options, they're available, they know how to access them, and they can do it quickly, as opposed to midwives who I'm not sure if they do anything at speed.
But your medical professionals are also willing to admit they might not know the answer, or they might need to consult with their colleagues, like get you into the hospital and then have everyone take a look to make sure nothing is being missed. No one's going on Facebook and saying, gee, I think this is happening. What do you think? And everyone says the same thing because their knowledge is all, we'll just wait and see. I remember when I went in and I was shocked. I was in labor and baby was coming very quickly. And I was nervous because he was early. And I remember one of the nurses leaning over and whispering to me, don't worry. Everything that we need to save you and your baby is in this room or right outside the door. So I didn't have to worry that I didn't know the answer or that I didn't, I had to look for something. They were looking for it. If they couldn't see what was going on, they would ask a colleague, and they had things, actual resources to help me. And that was what reassured me.